Hello and welcome to this episode of Chat AEC Tech. Today's topic is the use of extended reality in the AEC industry, and we'll focus on applications that use special hardware like headsets and visors or for mixed augmented and virtual reality. My name is Arni Heiskanen, and I welcome one new panelist, Damon Hernandez, founder of the AEC Hackathon and CEO of Mixed Reality, among others. Welcome, Damon. And the panelists who were on the last show are Jan Saar, Head of Digital Construction at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications of Estonia, Kristiina Savian, CEO and founder of Be Wise, and Enrique Nadales Clavero, BIM consultant at Tilco Advisors and the host of the BIM Cafe podcast, by the way, on which I was a guest recently. Thank you very much, Enrique, for that opportunity.
Our pleasure, Arni.
Yeah. So, as we know, extended reality tools have been around for many years, but you don't see people with headsets on the construction site very often, or even at architects or design engineering offices. So, what are or will be the killer apps of extended reality in the AEC sector? That's something that we are going to discuss. But first, I'd like very much to know about your best personal experiences with MR, AR, VR, using these headsets and other gear. So perhaps, Damon, as you're an expert in this area, maybe you can start by telling us about your experiences.
Sure. So so my experiences with XR, specifically for the built environment sector, I think go back to 2007, and so working with the timber fabrication company, and so my job as the leader of the tech team was to look at how do we take this 3D fabrication models and then add value. And so at the time, as big supporters of standards, we were doing a lot of the development in a standard that was used for virtual reality and others called X3D. It was a VRML next gen. So this was virtual reality markup language for those that may remember VRML. And so a lot of what we were looking to do was how do we solve problems, either communicating what we were fabricating to the homeowner, or how are we helping the teams either in the factory or out on the job site doing the erection of the structures. So I think one of the most exciting applications that we did that really I think was a neat kind of showing of not just VR, AR, because a lot of what we had to build had to start on the mobile device first. So to restrict someone to a headset was a little bit limiting, but in the features that we had for VR, one that was actually pretty cool was a project that we did as part of an Esri accelerator program that our home building company was in, which is where we were showing how you could take interactive 3D up to virtual reality and then using the Oculus headset. And essentially you had a building components configurator. So it solved a problem that we had at the company. And so we made this very cool tool that essentially mashed up a bunch of digital fabrication data, geospatial data, and others. So a lot of different areas, but mainly assisting home builders. I'll just kind of pause there.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. So Kristiina, have you been trying out with these technologies recently?
So this is the interesting, and the reason I did think about, okay, should I sit on this? Should I just pass? I'm not an expert on this, but this is the thing, right? I also want to be the challenger, as I always am. And my experience obviously actually goes back to 9 years ago, where I started playing with an Oculus Rift. At the time I was working for, do we do advertising here? But anyway, big tech company, based in, US, and where we were testing, the visualization, of some of the products. And this is the thing, is always attracts people. Yeah. So the way when we were going to exhibitions and trade shows around the world. So I used to be based in London and look after the Nordics. So, I was doing a lot of, the Northern region, which, to be honest, they tends also to be the most advanced and everything. But still, it was very well received. I was the only stand with the Cube, and people that just wanted to test the Oculus Rift. So here it is. It's been 9 years.
Well,
we still see that? Not as much attention. I mean, it was a digital construction week, but only last month. Visited again the XYZ, which, just got back to me yesterday, and everything, and looked into, I was actually in Australia where I had last year when I had like a live demo, and this. And this is the thing is, have we really moved on in the last 9 years? Have we really seen this widespread adoption? Or, I mean, was it just a hype, just, a buzz? And this is the thing. So I don't know. I'm a bit skeptic to actually see a big uptake. I'm not saying that there are no use cases. I'm not saying that there are not an amazing way of visualizing, especially now, when we can't, visit on site all the time. We need to travel. We don't, limited travel. Are we really going to see this widespread adoption, or still really construction? We need to accept that is the use cases and the adoption is really going to be limited. And the only few times where I start looking into that, and it will start asking, like, shall we be, I do a lot of business cases and a lot of justification, technology, and it's just like, I can't justify. Like,
well,
it's
we can discuss this further.
Workflow. And this is the thing. So here, I want to also hear from the others is what is their view, because if I need to actually do an assessment, he's like, oh, see this massive change in 10 years.
Enrique, have you been wearing VR glasses recently?
Yeah, I'm not that long time ago as all of our participants here, but I do remember when I was younger to wear the first one. We were super bulky, and actually you put your phone inside, and that was a total experience.
Oh, wow,
right?
Yeah, one of those, yeah.
This was more like playing games or watching some videos who at the end made you a bit dizzy, right? And recently on more fairs, I haven't been involved with the industry as many times as you guys, but I see more and more companies providing this, as we see, so virtual reality and also augmented reality mostly. And I try several of them. I need to say that first of them, they are heavier than expected always, and it takes a lot of time to get used to the environment, right? It's something that is going to come, in my opinion, but it really feels that you need this kind of I don't know, couple of hours or few days of training to feel comfortable and navigate. Like first time you work in a 3D software also, right? You need to understand how to pan, orbit, and extrude some other surfaces, right? So you need this kind of process, or when you learn how to drive as well, I will compare it because it's a bit challenging. So, but the entry, just taking up the main point as the entry to the market from Apple, I think is going to set a milestone here for opening way more roads of innovation. And of course, it's like they say, okay, guys, we start the business here, so this is going to become somehow serious.
We still need a bucket. I still remember having like a bucket just in case someone forgets, because still today, right? When you start, it's a bit unsettling, when even if the visualization has improved, significantly, still, you feel out of place.
I know. Jan, is the ministry experimenting with VR, AR, MR?
Good question. Is the ministry experimenting? Officially, no, because there's public resources and funding. It's not our kind of main objective. Whatever is there, of course, we support innovation and all that stuff. But if you ask me personally, then I'm a big fan of VR and AR. I have an Oculus Quest 2 at home, which I use to play. Mostly only play because there's very little practical applications for it. But I've, ever since I was a kid, always at fairs, whenever there was technology, whenever there was anything to do with VR or AR, I was there. And to be honest, until the Oculus Quest 2, most of it was total crap. I mean, you can talk what you want and you can explain, well, it's, it's limited, but the view was always very narrow. It was very laggy. It was heavy. It had cables, etc. And the Microsoft HoloLens was advertised as, well, this is the breakthrough. This is great. The HoloLens was one of the worst of them all. I mean, it was just this postage stamp sized augmented reality area that you could actually use for something. And I'm pretty sure nobody really liked it. In some corporate environments, they were probably forced to use it, but that wasn't really the case. But there was one experience I had in 2019 that actually the first real application of AR that I saw that in our industry, in construction, where you really couldn't do the thing that you wanted to do without AR. And I have a, can I share my screen as well? I mean, people who are listening on the on their headset and probably driving or walking, they will probably not get too much advantage out of this. But let me just quickly see, where's the share button? It's always different. Okay, it's green and big, as it should be. I'm just gonna share my entire screen. So yeah, so this is a setup back in 2019 for the Tallinn Architectural Biennale. There was a team from UK and Australia who wanted to create a really cool looking sculpture. And I have an image of that here. This is the final thing that it looks like. Maybe the pictures are a bit small here.
So
let me see.
Yeah, it looks like a very organic, like a knot-like structure. With
Exactly. I think this is a bigger picture of it. So this is the final. No, it was a wooden sculpture, and each of these elements was individually bended and put together, and it was a 3D model, a BIM model. So they didn't use any drawings. They didn't have any drawings at all. So all they had to do to work with was the model, and the whole process was that they used, and I'm not kidding, they really used the HoloLens. So they would create for each of these single elements, these wooden curving elements of the sculpture, they had to bend them, and they were using steam to fix them in place. A really old technology, actually, but they had to create the form for each individual piece of wood individually. And that's why, and to do this with drawings or even looking at models on a computer, it's really hard. So what they did was they set up this HoloLens environment, and the guy you see here who is setting up the formwork or the structure to bend the piece of wood, he could see the exact shape of the wood. And that really was key to actually getting this piece of work done. And I could really understand why would you would need an augmented reality application for that. Of course, it's not a real building. It's a sculpture, it's art, etc. So practical value is still maybe somewhat questionable. But all in all, that was one of the applications where I actually saw it work for the first time, and where there was an actual need for it. Because most of the cases, there's not a real need for it. It's in many cases, it could be nice to have. It's flashy, it's cool, but people who want to get work done, usually the first thing is they take off the headset and they throw it in a bin because they don't need it. But in such cases, as you have this really complicated structures, and you try to do something really unique, in these cases, it can be an incredibly valuable tool. And in some cases, even you can't do it without augmented reality, like in this sculpture that I saw. But aside from that, to be honest, I haven't really seen that many good AR applications.
Yeah. By the way, the same, I think there was a team that was doing some masonry, which was really like a little bit more than just a straight wall. They also used HoloLens to do that masonry. So that is an application where I agree. That's where you can actually get some value.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just really critical about the HoloLens and all the other crap developed so far under the term of VR and AR. Now there's real actual technology that you can use. You know, Apple has come out, the Quest from Microsoft, etc. But and Varjo is doing some cool stuff, still, you know, tethered and stuff. But regardless of that, but the problem these guys had when they were setting up the sculpture is because they wanted to also use the HoloLens on site to also erect the sculpture, because you had to, you know, put all the places in the right thing and etc. and all the screws where they go. And they had constantly problems because, for one, whenever the sun was shining, it didn't work. Two, when it was too dark, it didn't work. So they were really struggling to find the right environment. So if you think about that, you know, most construction is happening outside outside in the open air in the environment. So you're immediately you have very strong limitations, and you have to have really good technology to pull it off. HoloLens
it's a very interesting, you know, scenario. And also, you know, this is the thing, is like the use cases then tends to be limited, and then the logistics or the application itself within the use case are challenging. So, I mean, without the, obviously, I really don't want to, you know, refer, but application where you have mission critical, like, you know, where maybe you can justify a very, very advanced, you know, headset. The question is, would you trust what you always done, or would you trust something new that at times has, you know, some logistical challenges? And here I want to hear from, you know, Damon. I want to hear, like, you know, bring me the, you know, the case for yes, you can trust it. Yes, you can use it.
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge that I was always told, right? Because the thing that was neat about construction and working with that is that a lot of those people were almost irreverent of technology. Like they wanted to be dismissive. They wanted to shoot it down and tell me why it wouldn't work and why the nerd stuff wouldn't apply, right? And so you know, I'll wear the shirt and long sleeves to hide those lashes, but it really made me understand that it has to be driven by purpose and value first. I think that's the big issue, is that a lot of these things are driven by interest in the ingredient, and the ingredient itself has no purpose. Okay, VR, AR just to use is useless. And so for me, it was solve a mission critical problem or don't waste my time, period. And so everything that we did was observing how could interactive 3D, because again, I will be the first person to say that if someone is building a VR or AR application for construction, that is very limiting, and I do not think they will be successful. But if you tell me that you're building an interactive 3D application for construction that leverages VR, AR features, then that's the value add, right? Because again, someone needs to collaborate and identify with what's in their pocket, not what's in the bin, because they had to take that off and get work done, right? So for me, that it was always about, how do you find the value first? Where does VR or AR make sense in the context of the thing? So no, out and open, if we're doing an open, you know, where will a warehouse be, or a data center, to Jan's point, certain devices are going to freak out. They don't know where they are. They need additional things, right? So I think it's very use case specific, and also as a feature. And that's why, you know, just to kind of plug, but what I have always, why I still do the hackathons after 10 years, because it's not a business, but it's because it is putting people in an environment where they're coming from the built environment sector, okay? Not technical or, you know, but people that from the industry that say, okay, I have this kitchen for a weekend. Here are these ingredients. I know the value that I need to generate at work. where do these make sense? And it gives them an opportunity to play with this and implement this where they're not spending money, budget, line items, this kind of stuff, right? To find that true value. So I am actually more skeptical probably than anybody on this call on the implementation of these technologies, because a lot of the people that are implementing this, it's like, okay, you've made a cool, but very much as was said, that's a nice to have, where these technologies can be driven for the, oh crap, I need to have this, I have to have this on every side. And when you do things like kind of building on that example that Jan shared. So, you know, the guy that's definitely one of these boots on the ground applies innovation, Cody Nowak, had a very interesting application that he did years ago with a construction company, I believe out of Los Angeles, where they were doing steel wall assemblies. And so they found that the time that a guy, a professional, could put on the HoloLens and do his job was reduced dramatically. Okay, and so this is a person who's done this every day. So imagine how that would accelerate for someone new or learning. So I think the thing that's interesting is that, you know, the doers aren't really talkers, right? They're implementing these technologies, using these technologies, and then, you know, just in final thought, the one thing that a person said to me one year that I needed to hear, but I didn't want to hear, was, you know, I noticed kind of like what you were saying, Christina, is that, you know, when VR first came out, you'd go to these built environment sector shows and you'd see where it was a person selling their service, and then they had the VR AR headset to get people to stop by the booth, right?
Exactly.
And it worked, right? So you have people dropping chimps and pizza and a HoloLens all around, and it's a building industry event. But then what was cool is then the next year is to come back and see where they were still selling their product, but now their R&D teams were playing around with VR and AR. And then you come back the next year and you see where they had their product and now they were implementing in this new feature of VR AR, and now you just have VR AR. So even over the years, you've seen it go from the booth gig to get you to stop to this is where we're starting to perceive value, right? And so that's been neat. And so seeing this, and then if any of y'all are familiar with Con VR, which maybe you're not, but it's the best kept secret. So this is it's a virtual reality event focused on applications for construction. Okay, this is the name of this conference. And are you familiar with it?
Very cool. Con VR. Okay.
Okay, this will be their 23rd year of having this conference.
Oh.
Okay. So obviously someone is finding value in this for them to be able to keep generating, you know, the conference schedule. And so this falls under what, again, that guy said that I didn't want to hear. But I said, hey, this one year I said, I've seen more HoloLens and VR headsets here. They're actually trying to be used for something than I do at the Game Developer Conference. Why don't you come to some of these tech events like the Augmented World Expo or some of these others and talk about how you use technology? Because a lot of those have the same speakers from the same big companies that are doing these POCs, but not real implementation. Come talk. And he said to me, he said, Damon, have you ever used a hammer? And I said, yeah, of course. And he said, how many hammer conventions have you gone to? Talked about how awesome the hammer is. And when you start doing that, then I'll start coming to your events. And that's when I realized, oh, this is just a tool. I'm the one that's geeking out about how this is going to change construction. No, this is just a tool. So that's, you know, just some of the things that I have found interesting in this observation of that it has to be value driven. And unfortunately, too many people get seduced by the like for example, like us, the Vision Pro. Wow, that came out. Nobody knows what that actually does. We don't know how well it does tracking. We don't know how big the field of, you know, and so we get seduced by these things more than we look at what is the value proposition of having 3 screens. What is the value proposition of being able to, you know, do my work and what these things allow for. And so that's where I would like to see more of the conversation go to the people who are saying, why do you need this? Not why is this nice to have?
Yeah, but to your point, I mean, Damon, Con VR, been there 20 plus years. I would argue that in Estonia, there is not a single construction company who's actually using VR or AR, besides some marketing gimmicks, sales, etc. Okay, that's granted. There are certain applications there, But for actual construction applications, engineering, design, construction, on-site, off-site, I'd say there's practically zero. And why is that? That's my question.
Do you feel that's a cultural thing, though, I guess is what I would ask the people here, right? Because I mean, one, it is kind of, it's a generational thing, right? I mean, younger people, of course, are going to gravitate toward technology. And I'm not trying to sound ageist, but this is the reality, right?
It is
I mean,
the
people,
reality, but they're not
you know?
joining construction. They're joining other industries, let's be honest, because we still have too many old-fashioned people. And, you know, I've
That's a
been
good
trying
point,
to, you know, I started from, you know, engineering and civil
Mhm.
engineering, and I moved, you know, to technology 2010, right? So it's been like 13 years of selling tech, and it's hard. I mean, there are millions. This is the thing. There are millions of headsets, millions of technology solutions, lots of, but still getting any tech to site is challenging. They doesn't get adopted. At the end of the day, it gets the job done with very little. And yesterday again, we had, you know, one with like tier 2 house builder in the UK, and we had this, you know, call, was trying to, you know, adopt, you know, this piece of technology and try and pilot, and it was like, I don't have to. My guys just don't want complication. These products are just too complex, and I need simplicity. It's simplicity. It will drive, you know, something that just does 5 things and does it well and simple and streamlined and really helps them to get the job done. And this is a problem. We can't waste too much time. Already we are on our iPhones like all the time, right? We can't do that on site. It is about building and stuff. And so I don't know. I'm still, I think it's going to be like, you know, you know, you say it's going to be some very good use cases where it's really justify, has, you know, Jan says it needs the right environment, so it can even just apply it everywhere. And maybe some very young people that are going to start adopting this and start building stuff, and then proving to the world that we're all wrong and we've done it the, you know, wrong way or the way along, you know, for all these years.
I think it's actually not even a problem of the use cases. The use cases are there. I mean, we've all seen Minority Report. We've seen sci-fi movies where it's great, it's cool, and I would use that. But the technology has been always like, and it's fallen short.
Do you think it's the technology down, or is it
expensive,
culture?
and it doesn't justify the investment for you know, companies who are trying to make a buck in the construction industry, which is hard enough. I mean, you know, the margins for construction companies, general contractors, is they're so wafer thin that, you know, anything they need to do. Bigger ones, of course, they do innovation, they do these projects, pilots, you know, that's why you have these the fairs and stuff as well. But in all honesty, I mean, in actual work, there's practically zero application for VR and AR.
But I would imagine that as an architect, I think that architects specifically would be using VR for modeling, and also there have been some cases where the design team or the extended team with all the disciplines will go with the client, will go walk into a BIM model and actually experience it from inside, not just looking at drawings. But I was at the Helsinki airport when it was recently, they have been doing a lot of extensions, and they said that the best way they use game engines for models, and they do walkthroughs and things like that with the game engines, but they use a huge screen instead of having everybody having a headset, because they said that's because we want to interact with each other and so on. So it would add another layer of complexity to have the people in the conference room to wear those headsets. So maybe I don't know. Sometimes it seems that we have a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. But are there any killer apps?
Well, let me ask here to all of you guys something that I think is also important. The term of the reality capture, right? Is like going a bit behind the virtual reality, but I think we are more used to see on the sites, and there's more companies also thriving and having success on the market, where in there's 360 cameras that captures everything. So I think this is something, a bridge between the real world and the virtual reality or the augmented reality. And the good acceptance that is taking on the market right now from the reality capture give me at least, or I think there is hopes for future development. I don't know how you see, but we see a 360 camera on someone's hat or on a selfie stick or whatever on the side, and we're not very shocked. So maybe in 10 years we see those Googles and we are not shocked neither. No, we don't know.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. I think that reality capture in general, I have actually tried the Oculus Quest 2 with a scan of, it was a point cloud that was scanned by Spot, the robot with Trimble's technology, and I would actually go into that scan with this gear. So it is possible, but still, okay, it's a very
Well, the question is it okay? And what is the purpose? Why are you doing it, what you're doing? What's the difference between having it just on the screen? I mean, what do you need to have this immersive, environment?
Good question.
Well, a couple things just to pick that apart, right? Because and again, this is why I go back to perhaps maybe we're even trying to give too much credit to VR and AR, right? But because again, that's when I came into it, people knocked that visualization layer off, right? So that's why I always refer to things as interactive 3D. So answer this: what is the value for construction and having interactive 3D? Okay, so if there is value, then obviously there's value in ways to view that data. Okay, and so to your point, if you're looking at a reality capture scan, you can get enough information from that, maybe. But if you actually just don't get it, right, you need to see how something is, right? Then that's where I think that immersing yourself, because the VR does store those experiences different in our brain, period. Like we can look at a screen all day long, look at our phones, tablets, big projectors, and our brain will store that in one way. But as VR, it'll store it as a memory. That's just how we're wired. All right. Mm-hmm. So if you're wanting to have that connection, or that, someone really is in that space, of course, that's where it makes sense. But I almost feel that when we say, what is the killer app for VR, AR? What's the killer, it's almost like asking someone who's, 4 feet tall, I don't know that really in meters, saying, why isn't that person an NBA star? It's perhaps maybe it's giving it too much credit for, what it really is. It's just a way of visualizing data and communicating information.
Yeah,
I don't see where it's anything more than that.
And this is to the point, Damon, you also said that nice to have or must to have. Maybe some technologies are coming now in waves, and everything, the believers of those technology, they want to replace everything with that. It's not the way. There is not going to be the only ring to rule us all, or the only tool or application to do everything in your house or in your life. Yeah. This come add-ons, and up to which point I want to keep adding things. So we need to see the real value on that. So that's the thing. Virtual reality, for sure, it will make an impact and will change some construction side, but it's not going to erase everything from what we have today.
It'll just be another tool in the toolbox for people, right? It won't be too killer.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's why I'm not the biggest. I don't have the biggest fans among the people who are building specific solutions, as you can tell, right?
I think the killer app would be actually something that works flawlessly. That would be the killer app. I mean, so far everything
that guy said
we've seen, it still has so many compromises you have to make. Like, why would you work with something like that? I mean, the hammer analogy, like a hammer is good as long as it's of the right size, of the right weight. If you imagine that the grip you have for the hammer is like minuscule, you can't do it, but you don't really want to use it, or if it's too light or not suitable for the job, then you have a problem. But I really think I'm a techno optimist, so I really think there's, let's say it'll take maybe 2-3 couple of years more, but the technology will advance, and we will start seeing actual applications more and more in the real world environment as well. But you know, VR is like what? First VR sets were already there like 40 years ago. I remember as a small kid, you know, watching Lawnmower Man. Wow, VR is almost here. It's there. It's right here. You know, a couple of years, and here we are, like 40 years later, and it's still not here.
Coming soon.
This is a way also that releasing, like Apple is releasing this product to the market, and many of those companies that is a way of testing. This is what I was reading on some of the articles, that they just want to throw a bomb and see the impact. And mostly intended, I read as well in some of the piece of content that Arnie shared, that is intended to catch the attention and the feedback from developers. This is what they want to know, if it's going to be accepted, how they want them to tell them what to do better to sell them more. No? So this is a bit the idea that I don't think they are convinced, for example, Apple in this case, or any other company, of this is the future, but they're trying to test because they see that people around are moving. So, okay, why not? Let's try to give it a test. In terms of usability, I totally agree with you, Jan. But also I will defend the newest technology, saying that you always need to sacrifice a bit of your process time to give it the chance. No? If we don't sacrifice a few time of learning and try to do the things differently, you cannot fully say in one day, this is shit, this doesn't work, this is not really giving me value. You need to waste your time a bit to see if it's gonna give me value, no? So let's give that.
It's okay, it's not wasting, you know, it's still you're still getting something. I don't know.
If it looks like crap, if it works like crap, if it sounds like crap, then it's crap. That's it.
Yes, but
I really like Damon's point of view. That, and I fully subscribe to that it is a tool, but the tool is not yet mature enough for the industry to adopt it. That's the point.
But there are some applications now where you can overlay a BIM model. For example, XYZ Reality is doing that. So you can place the BIM model on top of reality, and I would imagine that, for example, if somebody's installing something like in the ceiling, and they are inspecting something, or maybe that there's value in that. I don't know.
Yes, there is value, and you know, I had this like big conversation because also, you know, this is the thing, is like it didn't fully work. Like it was not perfect, and because it's not perfect, and I feel really bad because, you know, I know how much time and, you know, they're investing, and I'm not saying it's not amazing, it is amazing, but we also seems to look and judge this on, yeah, okay, but it's off, so it doesn't work, so I can't trust it. And this is the thing, is not about just trying it, it's about trusting the process. And we trust our construction process because we've been doing this for hundreds of years, and we know it's a very risk-adverse industry, and that is the reason why we keep building it in the same way, and we can never innovate in this industry. And for someone, you know, I worked with some amazing technology coming out of like labs in, you know, in Australia. And it's like, this is amazing, but it's about 5 years before, you know, you do all the testing and you get approval to use it on site. And then the assessment of the consequences or anything that you can't see, that you know, using the long-term liability, it's just the reason why it doesn't get implemented. And I don't know, I think we're still a long way.
One thing that I know that is near and dear to Damon is the metaverse. and somehow I feel that the discussion around it has died down. But
let's talk about the metaverse. No, honestly, I just really want to know. Damon, tell me.
Nobody's talking about the metaverse anymore, Damon. That train is gone.
That's well, you know, that's the cool thing about not being a bandwagon fan, is you'll stay on the train. So yeah, so just, you know, for those that are, you know, interested, a little back history. So I actually changed my career into what I'm doing because I read Snow Crash. I changed from going into international corporate law, read Snow Crash, and said, I want to build that stuff instead. So that's what got me into VR back in '99. I think the issue with that term, okay, is let's just do some clarification. I highly encourage anyone watching this, go see what Tony Parisi 7 Rules of the Metaverse is. Now, this is the guy who created Web3D. Okay, so for anyone in any place that's doing 3D in the browser, city models, it doesn't matter. This is one of 2 dudes who created this. So I think he has something to say about it. And of course, he's at Neil Stevenson's company, Lemon 1. And so the metaverse is interconnected virtual worlds. I think what's happened now is that people don't want to say we're building a virtual world, so they use the word metaverse instead. Now, that's the equivalent of me saying, I'm not building a website, I'm building an internet, and you'll be able to come to my internet and do stuff. That's cute, but it's wrong. There's the internet and the web, and then there's a website. So a lot of these things, these roadblocks, these things that marketing people are calling metaverses, they're virtual worlds. Because for a metaverse to exist of true interoperability, the biggest challenge to that, as we saw in 2006 to 2009, is business models. It's not technology interoperability or data, it's business models. So that's the biggest issue for the metaverse right now. So now that we've kind of defined that, I thought what was neat is in around 2008, it was after Henrik Bennetson, a Nordic, a Dane, he was at Stanford, had a Metaverse U conference. And around this time is where people came for the Metaverse, Open Metaverse Roadmap. And they divided and expanded upon Neil Stevenson's idea of virtual worlds to include augmented reality, life logging, or as we now call it, social media, narcissism, whatever, and then mirrored worlds. And that's what intrigued me, right? Because the mirror worlds, and this is what the built environment is doing right now, whether they know it or not. Every digital 3D building that's made, tree, park, curb, is a foundation for the mixed reality future that's coming, whatever verse it's going to be called, right? And we're starting to see how this kind of plays with like Google and what they released with some of their AR core stuff, right? Where they're taking the data that they have of where buildings are and then allowing game developers to bring that in for collision. So if I'm racing a remote control car through Tallinn, it's actually going to bang into buildings and stuff like that, right? So that's what's neat, is to see that in the idea of the metaverse, which is many decades away, and also it's to be of a place of privilege to think that this isn't going to be the way that people access the metaverse for decades. It's not going to be a headset slapped on their face, right? It's going to be this. So if you're building for metaverse, start with this. And so that's where I think that right now the value is that it's like saying, what's the value of the internet? The internet has come and gone, and that ship has sailed. Well, if you're a web developer and you develop websites, I don't really care if the hype is around the internet or not, because it's coming. And so that's kind of just my stance on the bandwagon fans of metaverse, is that it's a lot like Columbus. And being from the States, I can say this. You had somebody came over, which were the new people. They discovered the Caribbean, which was NFTs, crypto, and blockchain, went back to the old world and said, hey, that whole new world is this, this, and this. So I think that's the other issue, is that people are missing that the bigger part of the metaverse actually is the digitized built environment and reality. That's that R part of X or M or A or V is the R. And that's why I know that the built environment is pushing that digitization a lot faster for value than the gaming industry is, right? And has more reason to do it, I think, cohesively, whereas they will do it fragmented. You'll have each place will make 3D Helsinki to have it in their game, instead of saying, hey, how can we leverage this one asset that the city already has as an available data set and do something cool from there. So yeah,
the comparisons with the internet and the metaverse are really good, but you can also see or elaborate, hypothesize a little bit looking back at what has happened on the internet, and what if the real metaverse has a place to emerge, because the internet is now corporations, and that's what Facebook was trying to do. It was trying to trademark and product metaverse and create their metaverse, but that's not how the internet works. Exactly. You don't build. I build my internet. We had AOL back in the day. It was horrible, you know. But eventually that broke down. That model didn't work, and now we have, you know, a lot of people, for them, Facebook is the internet. They actually never venture outside of Facebook, which is to me, a guy who grew up on the open web, is nonsense. It's like crazy. But for a lot of people, they don't care. They don't even understand how the web works. They just use the Facebook app, and they know that's the internet. I mean, that's that's for them. And that's the problem with, I think, a lot of these metaverse, where the metaverse discussion went wrong, was that people were also starting to think that that's kind of where we should be heading, and, you know, whether Apple or Google or Microsoft or Facebook and how they integrate with each other. But it has to be an open ecosystem. And I remember the days also in what started with VRML, you know, and Second Life and all that cool stuff that came about. That was much more open than what we have. You know, the big companies investing, the IT companies putting huge amounts of money into investing, you know, what they think is the metaverse, but it's actually just their corporate product that they want to make nice and shiny, and they want everybody to use. But I think now that the technology is getting better, and this understanding that, you know, this walled garden of metaverses is not going to work, and it hasn't worked. You know, Facebook has more or less faced the music that their business model and approach didn't work. We have a real opportunity for something more open and something more real to emerge. The type of metaverse you're describing, Damon, and that's something I want as well.
Yeah, well, and just in clarification, I think that, you know, if the metaverse turns out to be like it was in Snow Crash or Ready Player One, myself and everyone I know that's been in it for decades failed. Because the idea of being in something where it's like the one-stop escapism from reality. So actually what the book is, that is the exact opposite of where we want to go. Like, I believe that these technologies should make us more present and more connected with one another. And that is not something that
exactly,
you know, and so so just in all clarification, a lot of the people who, they're not the bandwagon fans, but they're like, they make some element of the metaverse. That's why, you know, the people who should call themselves, if you ever see someone who calls himself a metaverse expert, they are the opposite. Okay, because the people who are actually doing it only are doing an element, and they don't label themselves that way. They don't need to. And so that's also the other thing is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, right? There's a lot of the excited, and I don't know if it's the clueless leading the new or the new leading the clueless. But that's the other thing that one has to fight. And as someone who's used the moniker Metaverse One on YouTube since 2007, I almost throw up in my mouth when someone says metaverse now, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not the way it's supposed to be.
I get the same where when people say digital twins, so don't worry. And this is the interesting thing, is like, I just was actually checking out the website on VR, you know, that you're saying, and obviously it's linked obviously to the entire digital twin story and the research center, and, you know, some very interesting, you know, people. So yeah. It's very interesting. So thank you for, you know, describing me the difference. Probably you're the best, you know, someone really explained, you know, the best and clarify the differences and really where, you know, we see the value. And this is the thing, maybe that virtual world is actually where we see, you know, it might drive more value. That linked maybe as an extension to the VR, then, you know, maybe is where is the right combination. I don't know.
But Damon, let me ask you this: would you rather have us doing this podcast, as we are doing now, watching the screen with smaller screens, or you would be rather be in a virtual world, fully immersed, and sitting next to me, and more importantly next to Christina, and enjoying kind of like full haptic experience of people being there? Because that's one thing that I have really come to appreciate, and that you experience in VR, playing games, of course, and especially playing network games, is when you're there with somebody else, there is a feeling It's hard to describe. There is a feeling of presence that you don't get in any other medium, and that is something we're yet to really explore. But I wouldn't say, I mean, Snow Crash type of future and type of metaverse is necessarily that we don't want that. It's a bad thing. I mean, eventually we're going to upload our brains to the cloud anyway. Machines are going to take over, but well, there's still a while to go for that. But I think there's definitely a balance there, and having a virtual world where we can communicate seamlessly and get that feeling of presence is something that could be, you know, the actual killer app for VR and AR.
Yeah.
Well, if one's looking at a killer app, of course, every technology that brings people closer together is going to win. That's why you can go to the poorest of countries and they have phones, right? So I mean, you know, but in construction specific, that's where I would say, where does having the sense of presence make sense and add value in construction or in the built environment sector? Okay, so that's why I said find the value of what it provides. Now, to your point, and this is where I say it goes back to what is the context. So this is why I love Mozilla Hubs or Croquet.io or any web-based VR platform, is because when people would say, hey, we're having an amazing speaker, y'all can come into AltSpace or a VR platform to watch a speaker. This means I have to go get a headset, do all these additional things, or I can just open up a browser window and keep doing what I'm doing. Now, to your point, and this is relatively new for me, so I'll share this because it was a little embarrassing, but I used to be one of these people that was just social virtual worlds or social VR, bah humbug. Like, what a waste of time. If you're not in there doing something, hang out with real people, you know? I mean, you know, just, I was that guy, right? Stick in the mud. Until my father, who has clocked way more VR hours than I have, kind of guilted me and said, hey, come join one of these VR social worlds. And automatically red flag for me is, this is useless. This is useless, but whatever, Dad. So I log in, and this was, again, just a few years ago. And yeah, even though he's a brown cylinder and a brown, you know, looks like Mr. Hanky the Christmas poo, there was still, to your point, you know, there was something about him being next to me where when he would talk, I would turn and see, and then hey, so that sense of presence could not be duplicated in video, right? Has not been duplicated. And that's where, you know, my old Grinch heart started to melt for Whoville, where I was like, okay, I get it now. I get it now. It's that sense of presence, that sense of being together, that communication.
Okay.
This technology has brought someone closer. So
yeah, so we finally found the killer app. I think.
Communication, right? Bring people closer together so they can understand what's going on, I guess. Yeah.
This is what you say also, Damon, the experience. So
I have to jump off in a second, so just
yeah, but so yeah, I think we are. Yeah, maybe we'll discuss this next time in 5 years and see where we go. But
won't be too far along, I think. That's the problem.
But anyway, so this has been a fantastic discussion, and I think I'm really happy that you could come, and I hope to see you again soon. And thank you very much for your collaboration, and I'm sure that well, we have to come up with the next item for our discussion.
Yeah,
next
we
topic.
do.
So, but maybe it's something.
Go.
Yeah.
Just real quick thing. I do want to say, just in closing real fast, that you know, to all the VR and AR companies out there that are dealing with construction, just thank you, right? Because it's a tough industry to deal with. You really are plowing ahead and figuring out what will work, what won't work. Again, like Jan's saying, where the technology just sucks, where it does help. So again, to all those that are out there doing it, just, you know, I don't want to be ants at your picnic. I do want to say also be sunshine to say thank you. Just keep up the great work and plowing ahead.
Absolutely. It's the crazy
Great
ones who
closing.
make the change.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes, very good.